You know, one of the best parts about owning an Ariens Sno-Thro is that replacing wear parts is easy and it can be done in your own garage. Today, we're going to show you how to replace the belts on a Deluxe 28 model following the instructions in the service guide for our unit. And even if you don't have a Deluxe or Platinum model on the 921 chassis, follow along anyways because the service procedure is actually quite similar to that of a Professional Series or a Compact Series model. And as always, before we start a service procedure, we're going to reread and follow the safety instructions in our operator's manual and make sure that we have the right personal protective equipment and that we are up to the task.
Remove and loosen the hardware retaining the belt cover to the unit and remove the belt cover. Remove the hardware retaining the chute gear cover to the chute gears and remove the cover. Use a needle nose pliers to push the spring clip from the chute rotation rod and then remove the clip. Remove the chute rotation rod from the dash panel. Remove the belt finger hardware and the belt finger. Now we're ready to remove the attachment belts from the engine sheave. But before you start, make sure you're wearing thick, sturdy gloves. The engine sheave is sharp and can cut if you're not careful while removing the belts. Grab the recoil starter handle, slowly pull the handle while simultaneously guiding the belts away from the attachment sheave. Underneath the dash panel, remove the hairpin and the sleeve bushing from the discharge chute deflector lever and remove the cable eyelet from the lever. With the pliers, position the rubber boot away from the cable anchor and remove the cable anchor from the cable bracket. Remove the discharge chute deflector cable from the engine mount.
Now before you completely separate the auger housing from the frame, you'll need to support the handlebars. In this case, I positioned a sturdy table behind the handlebars so that when I remove the hardware connecting the housing to the frame, the handlebars can rest on the table.
Remove the hardware retaining the housing to the frame. Remember, there's hardware on each side of the unit. Once the housing is tipped forward, you can access the attachment belts and remove if necessary. With safety goggles, protective gloves, and a needle nose pliers, remove the idler spring hook from the traction drive idler. Loosen the jam nut on the traction drive clutch adjustment barrel. Once the jam nut is loosened, turn the adjustment barrel to add cable slack. Then remove the stop bolt from the frame. To remove your traction drive belt, position your traction drive idler away from the belt. Then slowly and manually turn the engine crankshaft while slowly guiding the belt out of the engine sheave. Once the belt is loose, guide the belt out of the traction drive pulley and remove from the unit. To reinstall the traction drive belt, position one end of the belt over the engine crankshaft and position the lower portion of the belt between the traction drive pulley and the friction disc. From underneath the pulley, reach for the belt and align it in the pulley. Then, slowly turn the crankshaft by hand to realign the belt in the traction drive sheave on the crankshaft. Reinstall the stop bolt into the frame. With safety goggles and a needle nose pliers, reinstall the idler spring hook back into the traction drive idler. Install the new attachment belts into the attachment pulley on the rear of the housing. Then, grab the belts and slowly tip the housing back into the frame. Make sure the mounting brackets align with the pivot rod in the frame. While holding the position of the housing, reinstall the mounting hardware and finger tighten. After the housing mounting hardware has been finger tightened, torque the hardware to the specifications provided in your service guide. Reinstalling your auger drive belts is very similar to the removal process. Once again, make sure you're wearing thick gloves. Second, make sure that all belts are aligned in their pulleys. While slowly pulling the recoil starter handle, gently guide the belts back onto the engine sheave. Once you're completed, make sure that the belts are aligned in their pulleys and sheaves. Route the chute deflector cable back towards the dash panel. Also make sure the cable is routed into the P-clamp on the engine mount. Route the chute deflector cable end back to the chute deflector bracket. Insert the chute deflector cable anchor into the bracket and reposition the rubber boot over the end of the anchor. Reinstall the cable eyelet onto the chute deflector lever and then secure with a bushing and hairpin. Turn the traction drive adjustment barrel until slack is removed from the traction drive clutch cable. Then tighten the jam nut against the end of the barrel. Reinstall the belt finger with the original hardware and finger tighten only. Reinstall the chute rotation rod into the dash panel and then into the chute gears. Align the hole in the rod with the hole in the chute gear. Align the hole in the end of the chute rod with the hole in the chute gear, then reinsert the spring clip through the holes. Turn the chute rotation rod to ensure that the spring clip is secure. And finally, reinstall the chute gear cover over the chute gears and secure with the original hardware.
As you can see, replacing the belts on your Ariens Sno-Thro is an easy task that can be accomplished by anyone. But before we return the belt cover to the unit, we want to check 3 things. First, make sure all hardware has been reinstalled and torqued to specification. Second, make sure your belt finger has been adjusted according to the directions in your operator's manual. And third, readjust the cables for any belt that's been replaced. So if you replaced your traction drive belt, make sure to readjust your traction drive clutch cable. And as always, make sure you check those adjustments after first use. For belts and other replacement parts, you can find them online at parts.ariens.com or from your local Ariens dealer.